Let's bring you this now. From February of next year, vaccinations will be mandatory at the University of Free State. Wits and Cape Town universities have also made vaccinations mandatory. So for some reaction on this, we're joined by Asive Dlanjwa from the South African Union of Students. Asive, good morning to you and thank you so much for your time this morning. Your reaction, first of all, to mandatory vaccinations, also particularly on campus in universities.
Good morning, Dumelo, to you and your viewers. I think I must maybe start off by saying that as the South African Union of Students, we fully support that all students in all institutions of higher learning should get vaccinated. As a matter of fact, we have been running many programs and interventions to ensure that this happens. But what we are completely opposed to is that students should be coerced and they should be forced to vaccinate against their constitutional, their constitutional imperative to choose whether they want to get vaccinated or not. So we are saying that the students should be protected in their constitutional agency to determine whether they should whether they want to vaccinate or not, that it should be upheld and it should be protected. As much as we welcome and in fact as much as we encourage that all students should vaccinate.
Yeah. We know that UFS, we know that UCT as well as Wits University, or at least University of Free State, will be implementing this mandatory vaccination program from next year, Feb. But Wits and UCT have already started that program. So far, how are students impacted? Because my understanding is that mandatory vaccination requires that if you are not vaccinated, you have limited access to in-person contact on campus. There's certain, sort of privileges that a student has, but if you're unvaccinated, you won't be able to access those privileges as a student on your own campus. How have students who haven't been vaccinated been impacted by this?
As far as we know, it is that they will roll out this policy from the beginning of the year next year. And I think since yesterday afternoon, we have since written to all the institutions that have taken this decision, also to ascertain exactly the impact that it's going to have on our students. But I think one thing that remains clear is that we are not going to allow a situation whereby students are not allowed to enter campus. Because you see, once you legislate the vaccination, the next thing that you're going to have to, because when you put in place any law, in order for you to enforce it, there must be a level. They would have to take certain punitive actions against students who do not necessarily follow or fall within those particular prescriptions, which will then lead us to a point where either students are being excluded unjustifiably, or it will lead us to a point where students are being criminalized. Those are both situations that we are not going to tolerate. And so that we do not even arrive there, we are not going to allow it. We are cordially engaging with them. We'll carry on to engage with them. We've also since written to the Department of Higher Education. And we're hoping that we'll find each other before the 1st of December. Because one thing that we are not going to allow, and this is really not a threat, it is that there is no student that will be locked out from the gates of the institution because they have taken a personal decision not to vaccinate. That situation we are not going to allow.
I remember when we had a conversation about this very same topic, Asive, with one of the Wits University's SRC members. They had mentioned that they obviously received communication from Wits University that for those who are unvaccinated, they would have to produce a weekly test result, a negative test result at that. That number one, they have tested, and number two, that they have tested negatively, obviously, for COVID-19. But the concern from Wits University's SRC was that who's going to carry that cost of those weekly tests and, obviously having to provide the test results as a consequence. I mean, have you engaged with students or even perhaps with some members of the SRC at various universities about, or even management at universities about that cost for those who are unvaccinated, yet they still need to bear the cost in testing and providing that result?
In the event that Wits goes that direction, fortunately or unfortunately, the majority of the students in our system are students that come from poor and working class backgrounds. So they most definitely would not be able to afford any test. So if the university is going to make the necessary funding or resources available for students to do that, then by all means, because I think all of us have the same objective, and that objective is to fight the pandemic, fight against the pandemic, and it is to ensure that our lives get back to normal as fast and as soon as possible. But it is also to ensure that we protect our lives as students, but also the lives of our fellow students, families, and societies in general. So we would not be opposed to that. But one thing, of course, that would never happen is that the students pay for that themselves. And I think maybe also I don't think we have indicated why we have a problem with these mandatory vaccinations. I think the reason we have a problem with mandatory vaccinations, the first one, besides the fact that it goes against the grain and the grain of our constitution, but also even government themselves, they have not made vaccines mandatory. Number two. Number three, institutions of higher learning are spaces where we expect that intellectual engagement debates using facts and science shall prevail over coercion and draconian measures. If in an institution of higher learning you cannot achieve cordial and debate where we are able to persuade each other using science and facts, what hope is there for other sectors of society if in an institution of higher learning we are not able to have an intellectual engagement regarding the vaccines? The vaccines.
All right, we'll have to leave it there due to time, Asive, but your point is clearly taken, and those reasons are provided as to why you would not, support mandatory vaccines. And I think at the gist of this is you saying, should it remove the rights of students to get education and them not being able to access education?